Avodas HaParsha in Ner Avram. And again, the ideas of Avodah that you can get from the Parsha are many, many, but I feel sometimes we haven't done enough on Midos and to look what we can learn from the Avos, from these stories about Midos, and answering some very puzzling questions from the Parsha. We're going to learn a piece from the Kedushas Levi, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. Say it's a schus just to say his name, Levi Yitzchak ben Sarasasha. Right, and his schus, Am Yisrael should have Yeshuas in all ways. So, when the brothers came to Yosef, Vayavo achei Yosef vayishtachvu lo apayim arza. So the brothers came and they bowed down to him. This was what he saw in the dream. It happened. Vayar Yosef es echov. Yosef saw his brothers. Vayakirem, he recognized them. Vayisnaker alehem. He made himself like a nochri, like foreign to them, like as if he didn't know them. So, Rabbi Yitzchak asks, Yesh lavin ma bolash meinu bazeh shekosuv vayisnaker alehem. So why does the Torah emphasize that? It almost seems to emphasize his cruelty, that he hid himself from them, that he treated them like someone with no connection to him. So he says, Nira da kosu bolash meinu bazeh tzidkas Yosef atzadik. The Parshas is here trying to show us a particular act of righteousness of Yosef. Kihine Yosef cholam lo she'echav yishtachvu lo. Yosef had this dream that his brothers were going to bow down to him, right? Hine hashemesh v'yareach, hine anachnu ma'omim malumim, etc. Echav lo ratzu b'mluchas Yosef aleim. Okay, the argument between the brothers and Yosef is also a whole big topic, and it wasn't just emotional. It was based on din that they felt Yosef should not take that position, should not be a king over them. Says the way of nature is when one person defeats another, and the person who's being defeated knows the one who's defeating him. He says, he says, that man defeated me. Then it'll be very bad for him. He'll feel very bad. He has a lot of agony, right? This expression, the agony of defeat. But if someone defeats him, right, or if you defeat someone else, another fellow doesn't know who's defeating him, it's anonymous. Okay, it's now there's a few things here. I did look up a little bit because I'd heard about it before. They've done many scientific studies of the effects of defeat, like on animals, that when an animal is defeated, lots of animals fight each other to protect their territory, to other things. There are chemical changes in the brains of the animal that are defeated. And then they lose their fight kind of in many other ways. And they say sometimes also in human beings as well. When a person is defeated, it's that sense of defeat which is very powerful. Now what the Kedushas Levi is saying here is that defeat is magnified when it's someone you know who defeated you, right? And here, especially the one that you went against and you hadn't here, it's kind of, we were wrong, he was right. Yosef didn't want his brothers to go through that. They did bow down, he was right, but at that moment, right, they didn't have to go through that idea right then that here's Yosef and we have to bow down to him, just like he said. That would be too cruel. That could break them, that could damage them. It's interesting. It reminded me of something the Buster Rebbe said. The Rebbe of Levi Yitzchak Horowitz, that's how he said that when he was a young rabbi in Boston, the Ponevezher Rav came to raise money. So he was very enthusiastic and he said, Rebbe, I'll go with you to people to help raise money. He says, no, you shouldn't do that. He says, why? He says, why is it, let me ask you, why is it when people go to the bathhouse, right, to the schwitz, to the sauna, now this type of sauna he's talking about is the real sauna, like from the old days where they would do the hot water and cold water and hit you with these special birch branches and stuff. There's actually a couple of those still hiding here in Yerushalayim. And you're basically, unclothed while you're getting this whole treatment. He said, why aren't people embarrassed in front of the attendant there who does everything in the sauna and the bath? He says, because you only see him in the bathhouse. You're never going to see him again. He says, I came in from Israel. I'm going to be mavaza myself. I'm going to have to humiliate myself asking for money. But then I'm gone. He says, you're going to have to be here for the rest of the year. He says, you can't be mavaza yourself like that. It was an interesting, sensitive thought. Okay, so he says here, Hine bekan Yosef nitzach es echov b'kiyum machalomas asher cholom lo she'echov yishtachav lo. Here Yosef was victorious over his brothers. His dreams came true. Ube'emes heim lo rotzu b'zeh sheYosef natzach osam v'yitztarch l'yishtachav oslo. And they really, truly did not want this to come about. They really felt that it would be bad for Am Yisrael. This was the righteousness of Yosef HaTzadik. At the moment of his victory, of their defeat, that would be the time, right when they're on the ground, say, by the way, my name is Yosef. And right then, right when they're bowing down, he wouldn't do it. If they would know that what was happening and who it was, that would be very bad for them. So therefore Yosef the Tzaddik, when they were bowing down, he just treated himself like an Egyptian, right, aristocrat. They're bowing down. They had no sense that they were being defeated in their argument with Yosef as to whether his dreams would be fulfilled. They did something normal, right? They came, Yosef, second to king, almost the acting king in Mitzrayim, and you bow down to him. No big deal, right? And bowing down to Yosef, they just felt they're bowing down to an Egyptian king. That's why the pasuk says, "Vayishtachavu lo vayakirem." They bowed to him, and he recognized who they were and what it would do to them if they realized that it was Yosef that they were bowing down to them. They would have agmas nefesh, they would have agony. So he pretended that he's somebody else, said they shouldn't have this agmas nefesh. So he said this could also be the reason to answer the question that everybody has, why didn't Yosef send a postcard to Yaakov? Say, by the way, don't want you to worry, I'm okay, right? Then he was suffering. Yosef knew that the chalomas, the dreams he dreamed, were going to happen, and the brothers were going to have to bow down to him. So if he let his father know that he's there in Egypt, and then the brothers would have to come bow down to him, that would be bowing down to him as Yosef, and that would be very painful for them, because if his father knows, then they'll know as well. So therefore he didn't tell his father, so that it shouldn't get to them, so the time will come and they will bow down and they will just think they're bowing down to an Egyptian king. So this is a tremendous lesson in sensitivity and in a midah that everyone has to wrestle with. You find in the Sifrei Musar, they talk about a midah called the midah of hisnatzchus, right? Meaning, or natzchonus, they'll call it. I have to win. I must win, right? And that idea that in an argument, in a struggle, in something, I must win and I must defeat. And it also means the person kind of revels in their victory and revels in the defeat of the other. That's something which oftentimes is inside of us. Sometimes it motivates us very much, right, to want to show. I think I mentioned, I heard this lecture about how Israeli chutzpah helps them in the world of high tech. Because they'll say, okay, you cannot make a solar battery that small. So the Israeli says, oh yeah, I'll show you I can. Right? Says who? Right? And then they come up with many inventions that way because they refuse to this and they have to show the other person. But that's not the midah, right, that we are supposed to be using. Think like Yosef did about how it makes the other person feel, right, when you defeat him. The way someone views you often becomes the way you view yourself. Listen to a very wise thing from the old Talmud Rebbe of Yochanan Chorsky. That's how the Yortzeit comes out the first night of Hanukkah. The grandfather, current Rebbe. They say he always used to ask, he says, why don't people say a Shechiyanu before they die? Because you get a whole new world. So he actually passed away on the night of Hanukkah after benching Hanukkah Licht and saying Shechiyanu, just like this thing it would be. So at some point in his life, he asked his grandson, the current Rebbe, he says, you know how you see some Rebbes walk with a silver-topped cane? You know, looks very, he says, could you get me one of those? So he thought that was very strange. That wasn't his grandfather's style at all. His grandfather used to actually like people to laugh at him. He used to do somersaults at simchas and all these kind of things, whatever it would be. And so you didn't, all right, his grandfather wanted, he wanted. So he bought it for him. And when he gave it to him, he says, Eddie, why did you want this? He says, I'll tell you. He says, the doctor told me I have to start walking with a stick. He's afraid that I'll fall. When an old man starts walking with a stick, so then people start to look at him as, here it comes, you know, yeah, you can no longer do this, you can no longer do that, you're in the decline, Nebuch, we feel bad for you. He says, and then I'll feel that way about myself. Here, what's the worst going to happen? They're going to say, the Talmud Rebbe got a taste for covet. Okay, you know that. He said, but at least it won't be that. That's right. You get, so that's a picture. And again, we saw that by the Meraglim. Right, Vania Beineim Kechagovim, they viewed us as grasshoppers, and that's how we felt, right? Also as grasshoppers. So the Chachamim actually were very, very careful about these things. In the tefillah of Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, right, the tefillah that people say when they come into the Beis Medrash, right? Even though I don't know too many people who say it, but we should. It's in Brachas in the Mishnah, the tefillah to say before learning. One of the things he says is "Velo ekoshel bidvar halacha," that I should not make a mistake in matters of halacha. V'yismechu bi chaverai, and my friends should be happy with me. So the way I always read it is those are two separate requests, right? Obviously, I don't want to make a mistake in halacha. Please help me when I learn the sugya, when I come out to the halacha, and also in the social setting of Beis Medrash, let my friends be happy with me. The Bartanura says an amazing thing. He says, Rebbeinu Shalom, please don't let me make a mistake in halacha, because then it could be that my friends will fall into the danger of being happy at my downfall. And I don't want them to be punished for that. He says, help me do that so that they're not put in the nisayon, in the test of seeing me get it wrong, and then, they'll have that. It's such a beautiful explanation in the tefillah, and it's a picture of who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to be. There was a story, I was trying to look it up. I think I was bringing up the wrong tree a bit. I had thought it was with Rav Pinchas Hirschberg, that's all, the Rav of Montreal, and the Baba Rebbe, but then I remembered, I think I saw it with Rav Chaim Kreisworth, that's all. Correct. The common denominator is that they were both Iluyim, they both knew Shas and everything back and forth in all sorts of ways. So Rav Kreisworth, I believe it was Rav Kreisworth, was speaking to a Baba Chassid. A Chassid, the Baba Rebbe, says, I want to tell you a moifes from your Rebbe. I want to tell you a wonder. He says, we were at a certain occasion, and the Rebbe said something, a Dvar Torah, and he mentioned a certain Tosfos, and I told him, no, there's no such Tosfos. No, not Masechta, no such Tosfos. And the Rebbe just nodded, right? He said, after it was over, it suddenly hit me that there is such a Tosfos. Mm-hmm. So here, publicly, the Bava Rebbe, so to speak, apparently got it wrong, made a mistake, and the Rebbe sensed, if I am right, and he probably felt that he knew he's right, this Rav's known for knowing everything back and forth. That idea of, got him. The genius who knows his Gemara back and forth, I chapped him on a Tosfos that he didn't get. He said, Chas v'shalom. Right? He wouldn't want that to happen. He said the fact that was his automatic response, not to, so to speak, defend yourself in public, and with that gain a very classy victory, right, over somebody like that. He said, that's a moifes, that's what you call a wonder to look up to a tzaddik for. And again, it comes because naturally inside the person has built himself, I don't want to be the menatzeach at the cost of my friend's feelings. I don't look for that. I don't want that. That isn't how I need to build myself up. It doesn't mean, obviously, that we don't say the truth, right? People who are learning the Daf Yomi, it just says there that if you have a Talmud who's present at a din Torah and his Rav, the Dayan, is making a mistake, he must speak up. Okay, but
to the way you speak.
Correct. Correct, exactly. He's there as a Talmud, and he has to address that way, right? It's fascinating. Chazal said that Yeravim ben Nevat was rewarded for doing something very brave.
Can I just say
Please.
I want to say two things. Firstly, that came up in yesterday's daf.
Right.
And secondly, it came up in today's daf, which is very appropriate for Yosef.
Yep.
Tzaddik falls 6 times and comes up 7 times.
Yep. Sheva yipol tzaddik v'kom. Nachon. That's he kept on going despite the horrible things he went through. So that's the way in which a person is supposed to look and is supposed to approach these things. Let's listen to a fascinating letter. I believe this is a letter as opposed to a diary. Rav Yitzchak Hutner Zatzal, his Yortzeit was just recently also. So he was also a young genius. Not all Gedolei Yisrael were young geniuses. It's important to know. Okay? But some of them were, and he was. And he came to Slobodka as a young boy. I think he may have been 15 when he first came to Slobodka. And the Alter of Slobodka let him come into the special Vadim, the special shirim he gave that were for the older Talmidim. Right? And when some of them fetched about it a bit, he says, I know what I'm dealing with him. But he writes, first of all, these letters between friends were written in such beautiful Lashon HaKodesh. Some of the letters he wrote in Yiddish, that was particularly for family members usually often, but they wrote to each other in this beautiful, rich Lashon Kodesh that was just, soaked with references to Chazal and Psukim and all these things. So here is something that he wrote. This was in his diary. He kept a diary. He said, "Cheftzenu lekayim ha'inyan shel dibuk chaverim hametzuva aleinu mipi Chazal." Chazal say one of the ways in which you acquire Torah is by dibuk chaverim, by sticking together with a group of friends, by having a chabura, and dibuk is a very strong lashon, like devik, like glue, right, sticks together. He says, I want to do that. He says, but v'yotza lanu min bria meshuna. He says, instead of people forming these bonds of dibuk chaverim, came out this strange creature, sheshma, he says in Yiddish, reden and lernen, right? What they call sicha b'limud, to talk and learning, right? He'll say, why? He says, shelo toar lo v'lo hodar. He says it has no beauty, no countenance. V'shekorto v'achidud sheba. He says the little bit of sharpening of your learning that comes out of it, batel betray ruba, it is nullified, it's batel in 2 rubas, right? Meaning above so many things of kirkurim. Kirkurim is like what a rooster does, crowing, right? Because when you're fighting with someone and you win, or you're trying to win, you're like crowing like a rooster. Kirkurim meshunim, unagichos tamus umuados. And with goring, sometimes by accident, so to speak, like the shor tam, the ox who is not in the habit of goring, but sometimes you do, and sometimes you're a muad. Sometimes that's who you are, and you go into these discussions to do it. Upizur zman, the rikul vatola, as well as wasting time for nothing. We'll flesh it out in a second, right? Because obviously there's the idea of milchamta shel Torah, which is greatly praised, right? When people are learning, and it says, Avu b'no, Rav talmido, everybody are like oivim, they're like enemies when they're learning the sugya. But then, nasim oavim zelaz afterwards. When you close the Gemara, it's all in love, right? So that is meant to be something that comes out naturally in the learning process. What he's describing is almost like a form of dueling that was done in the yeshivas. That one boy comes over to another one, says, I'm going to try to talk with him in learning. They say he's the best. And to see if I can, come up with something that he couldn't come up with. Or I can frag up his, his rayas and things like that. It was a way, sometimes even a new student in yeshiva had to go through this to put him in his place so a few people would come, talk to him in learning, just to let him see where he is or he isn't. And this is something, like he says, that the goal isn't seeking truth. The goal oftentimes is to do a battle, to do a duel in which there's going to be a winner and a loser. He says he feels that that's puzzle, right? And he feels that it's a waste. He said, Rayon ze nitbager etzli, said this idea matured inside of me, v'nikva bi, and it was set in me, ad shechlatati lasur min haderech hanal, until I decided to veer off of that path, not to do it anymore. Sof sof kosher hi apreda, he says, in the end it really is hard for me to separate myself from doing that. It was a very part of the liveliness of the yeshivas. Yodei ani nemona, and I also know very well, ki od lo achas lo shtayim ekosher ba. I'm probably going to, fail in my commitment to not do it anymore, one time and another, because it's there so naturally. So obviously this isn't meant to stunt that tremendous liveliness of learning Torah, etc. And also the idea that people would go to Gedolei Yisrael to talk and learning, that was a very different thing. In other words, you would go, if you had a chance to meet one of Gedolei Yisrael, so you would hopefully have a question to ask him, and then it would go on from there. And it would go and talk and flow. That's all good. But this idea of the dueling, right, and seeing who's the winner in this and who's not the winner, apparently it was in that form that was somewhat negative. It could be, yeah. He was probably a minority, the way it makes it sound, in deciding not to do this. But it was fascinating. It's a fascinating sensitivity. So then, in terms of Hanukkah, I looked up a little bit. It was something that the Greeks weren't the ones who invented competitive sports of winners and losers. Those existed beforehand, sometimes, meaning there was always war and battle where you had winners and losers. But there were others who would do it just for fun, so to speak. Right? Have two people fighting each other. But the Greeks truly organized the world of the Olympics. And that world of the ultimate glory is to beat everyone else. Right? That is the winner. That's the picture. And when we came to Hanukkah, so that was the position that the Yavanim were in. They were the ultimate menatzchim. Alexander's empire was incredible when he was called the Great because he had conquered so much and conquered often in a very bloodless way. It was huge. And the way they conquered often was because people wanted to be part of the Greek Empire. They could offer them so much. All you had to do was pay taxes and join up. So everyone subjugated, including us, when Alexander came to Eretz Yisrael. Right? We became part of the Greek Empire. But the reason that they were able to cause Jews to become misyavnim, meaning to give up who they were and to adopt, even internally, a Greek outlook, is because what was projected is that we've defeated you. You Jews are a little group here in the Middle East. We're a world empire. And we do things that nobody else has done in all sorts of fields. We bring the world forward. We have created all these different things. The stuff that you're wasting on your time on doesn't really do anything. Right? It says you want to do it, b'vakasha, but as long as you realize your place, right? This is what they came. That's why the Greeks, Daniel saw in the Nevuah, you saw the Greeks as a leopard, which represents azus, this boldness, this chutzpah, which comes from the sense of, I know that I'm right. So this is why Am Yisrael, again, it's very hard to find accurate records of all the different things. The story of Yehudis, right, who went out, was because she felt that the Jews were entirely disheartened. According to one version, she was in a city that had been placed under siege and they were running out of food and water. And the way in which she was victorious, right, and that's the way it's described. You see in the Mishnah Berurah brings it down where he talks about the minhag of eating milchiks, right, of eating cheese. So it says after she cut off Eliphonis's head, they put it on the wall, right? And the Greeks all ran away. Why'd they run away? He's one officer, right? Is that? But then that idea of who's the menatzech and who's the menutzach. So the Haftarah we read on Shabbos Chanukah, Roni V'Simchi, from Zechariah, is the famous line, Lo b'chayil v'lo b'choch kim b'ruchi. Okay, Omar Hashem. Now, that doesn't mean that Am Yisrael doesn't need armies and soldiers. We certainly do. We see it throughout Tanakh. We see it throughout all the different times. But the victory itself, in other words, you can win a battle, like Am Yisrael recently, we won many battles, but then there's the danger when you lose one, you become that menutzach, and you look down on yourself and you get depressed. That's what happened in the Yom Kippur War, after the great victory in the Six-Day War. That, many people say, was part of the huge shock on October 7th, that we were defeated. We were the menutzach. And that takes a lot out of a person. So we have to understand that the reason that we're menatzeach, right? How is it that we defeated the Greeks? The Greek Empire continued on. The Greek outlook in the world continued on. But we were able to recognize that we're eternal, that we're working with an entirely different system than the Greeks, and therefore they can't defeat us. It's simply they're not even in our arena. That is the gift of Hanukkah that's there throughout, that remains with us throughout, even though there are many, many different things. That's why the name is Al Shem Chinuch, because it taught us how to deal even with the hard times and the things in which Jews were humiliated and tortured and beaten, etc. One who remembers Hanukkah remembers that we're always the Menatzchim. I'll just finish with one cute story for Hanukkah on this same theme. There was a great Gaon, Rabbi Avram Genachovsky Zatzal. He lived in Bnei Brak, but he used to come to Yerushalayim to teach in the Chibinu Yeshiva. So a Dayan from America came to speak with him about a very complicated Din Torah. He wanted his advice. It was a very complex Din Torah. So Rabbi Avram said, okay, I have to go to Yerushalayim. And this Dayan had a car, I guess. We'll go, we'll talk while you're taking me to Yerushalayim. He was... It could be before that, yeah, before he got the position in Chibin. He didn't start off in Chibin, that I do remember. So they were going to drive. Now, Rabbi Avram, this I knew, I'd met him at different occasions. He always liked to try to find rides for people. So they're about to get into the car. He sees a young, newly married couple coming out, and for whatever reason, he sensed they may need to go to Yerushalayim. He says, do you need a ride to Yerushalayim? They said, yes. He says, so hop in. So they get in the back, and he's in the front and talking with this Dayan, and Marim Makomas are flying all around in these very complex things. And suddenly in the middle of Rav Ram stops. He says, just 1 second, I want to ask you something else. Why do we eat sufganiyot on Hanukkah? So the Dayan is like, what? Sufganiyot, why eat them? He says, I don't know, I figure because of the oil or something. But why jelly? Why sufganiyot with jelly? So then the young, newly married man in the back said, I heard a Dvar Torah about this once, about the sweetness of Pnimius as opposed to Chitzonius or something like this. Okay, anyway, they came to Yerushalayim, they dropped him off. The Dayan said to Rabbi Avram, what in the world was that with the Sufganiyot? He says, look, I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw this new Kala looking at her new husband. They just spent Sheva Brachos where everyone was saying he's the next Rabbi Akiva Eger and Chafetz Chaim. It was very clear he didn't understand anything we were saying and had nothing to contribute. So I tried to bring up a topic that maybe he would have something to say. Baruch Hashem, it worked. Okay, it's the same principle. People understand that and have that sensitivity and look there. So there, Hashem even does nisim for them. The topic works. Okay, may it be a lichtige Chanukah.
Thank you.